All right, ladies and gentlemen, like I told you in class, I was going to go ahead and record this and post it up online just in case you need a little extra help knowing how to do area of a circle and how to use circumference of a circle. So let's get ourselves started. If you remember, this was your bell work problems. We had 4 2/3 minus a negative 1 4/5. We had 4 option choices. I'm going to teach you how to identify the best options before ever solving the problem. And then on the very bottom we had solve for m, a negative 2/9 m plus 12 equals a negative 8. Okay. So let's get ourselves set up. We want to use red since we've got the blue background. All right, so the first problem was 4 2/3 minus a negative 1 4/5. Okay, so we write the problem. 4 2/3 minus a negative 1 4/5. Okay. Now, as I told you in class, adding, subtracting, fractions, that kind of stuff is going back to elementary school. What makes this a 7th grade skill for us to be practicing is the minus negative. All right, we're adding and subtracting integers. Now, if you remember, a minus negative, okay, turns into a positive. It's a plus. You can even kind of see it right here. See how it looks like a plus? All right, so this is actually 4 2/3 plus 1 4/5. Now, remember what I told you before we even solve the problem, we can sit here and start eliminating some choices. What's 4 plus 1? It's 5. So it can't be A and it can't be B because both of those are less than 5. And it definitely can't be the negative 7 2/15 because 4 plus 1 is a positive number. It's not going to be negative. So that leaves us C and D. Now, the benefit is even if you didn't know what to do next, C and D tell you what to do. Actually, all four of the answer choices tell you something important. You need to have a denominator of 15. So we have to convert this 3 and 5 to have a like denominator of 15. So 3 times 15, or 3 times what's going to be 15? 5. So we take the 5 and we multiply it by the numerator. 2 times 5, 10. 5 times what gives me 15? 3. So 4 times 3 is going to be 12. So now I add straight across. What's 4 plus 1? 5. What's 10 plus 12? 22. So now I got 5 and 22/15. Okay? Now I'm going to break this up into two. I'm going to break this up so you can see this. This is 5 plus 22/15. Okay? Now the fraction 22/15 is an improper fraction. We need to convert it to a mixed number. So the question is how many times can 15 go into 22? It can go in 1 time. So what's 22 minus 15? 7. So you got 1 and 7/15 plus 5. What's 5 plus 1? 6. So it can't be D. It has to be C. 6 and 7/15. Okay? All right, let's look at solve for M. We have a negative 2/9 m plus 12 equals a negative 8. Now, I hope you remember order of operations, PEMDAS. Okay? Now, when we solve order of operations, we start with parentheses, go to exponents, then we got multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. It's all there. Well, when we're solving 1 and 2-step equations, we actually go backwards. We start with the subtraction, addition, and then go to the multiplication and division. Okay, so we have to go backwards. Now, if you look, this is a negative 2/9 times m plus 12. The goal is to get this by itself. So I've got to start off with the addition and subtraction. I've got added 12, so I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. Now remember, I'm doing this because an equation is like a balance beam. If I take something from one side, I have to maintain the balance of the equation by taking that same amount from the other side. Okay, so basically whatever I do to one side, I have to do the same thing to the other. So plus 12 minus 12 is going to give me 0. So I'm left with a negative 2/9 times m equals, what's a negative 8 minus 12? Well, now listen to it. It's a negative 8 and a negative 12. You've got 2 negative numbers. So you can just sit there and add the positives of those numbers and then slap the negative sign at the end. So 8 plus 12 is 20. Put the negative sign. Now I've got a negative 2/9 m equals a negative 20. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going to say, Mr. Hale, let's divide the negative 2/9. That's correct. That is what we would do. But if you remember, as a fraction, when you take a fraction and divide it by a fraction, it's the same as taking that fraction and multiplying it by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So instead of taking a negative 2/9, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of a negative 2/9, which would be a negative 9/2. Okay? A negative 9 and 9 reduce out. The 2 and the 2 reduce out. Negative times a negative is a positive. So it gives me m equals. Okay? Negative 20 times a negative 9 is 180 divided by 2. Half of 180 is going to be 90. So we got m equals 90. Now you can check to make sure. Use your calculator, plug it in, do some multiplying, do some dividing, some adding, subtracting, find the answer. But I'm telling you, that is the correct answer. M equals 90. All right. Now you can pause the video if you didn't finish writing this down, but we're going to continue on. All right. Okay. Well, this is not necessary. We're going to move on to the next problem. Okay. So we're trying to find the area of the following semicircle using pi as approximately 22/7. Okay. Now here's the thing. Okay, a semicircle. So if you've got a semicircle is 1/2 of a circle. So that means we're going to follow the same formula to find the area of a circle, but at the very end, we're going to take that area and divide it by 2. So let's do that for this one here. Okay, we got area equals pi r squared, where if you remember, r is the radius. Oh, that's interesting. We need the radius, but this problem gives me the diameter. How do I find the radius if I've been given the diameter? Correct. I divide by 2. So I take the diameter and I cut it in half. Okay, so what's 14 divided by 2? Right, 7. So the radius is 7 centimeters. So now I can start doing some solving. So area equals, we said pi is 22/7 times 7 squared. Okay, what's 7 squared going to be? No, it's not 4. 7 squared is saying it's 7 times 7. You're taking 7 and you're multiplying it by itself twice. Okay, so 7, 7, put its multiplication in the middle. Okay, now if it was like 7 cubed, you'd write down 7, 7, 7, put multiplication symbols in between each 7, and it'd be 7 times 7 times 7. All right, so we get area equals 22/7 times 49. Anybody want to tell me why I wrote that 49 kind of high up? That's right. I'm going to convert it to a fraction. Makes it easy to solve. Now, I'm lucky. 7 and 49 have a common denominator. Okay? Both can be divided by 7. 7 divided by 7 gives me 1. 49 divided by 7 gives me 7. So now I can multiply. 22 times 7, 1 times 1. 22 times 7 is going to be 154. 1 times 1 is going to be 1, so we're just going to leave it as 154. But now, that was the area of the entire circle. I only have a semicircle, which is half of the circle. So I'm going to take the area that I found for the circle, divide it by 2, and I get 77. Yeah, see, we're not done yet. We got to make sure we put those units on. 77 centimeters squared. So what we proved is basically to find the area of a semicircle, we take the formula for a circle, pi r squared, and divide it by 2. Okay? So that's the formula for a semicircle. I put the S there for semicircle. Area of a semicircle. Okay? So let's move on to the last one. What is the area of the quarter circle? Well, if we use the information we had from the first problem, we should be able to find the answer to this one. Okay? So a quarter circle is 1/4 of a circle. So that means I'm going to use the formula area equals pi r squared, and I'm going to divide it by 4. That's the formula for a quarter circle. Okay? If we found the area of the entire circle, in order to find the area of a small 1/4 piece, we just have to divide the total area by 4 to get that small piece. All right. Now, we need the radius. Oh, see, we're lucky. They already gave us the radius. They say it's 6 centimeters. So now it's just to plug in and solve. Pi is 22/7 times 6 squared divided by 4. Okay, so 22/7 times 36, and I'm going to go ahead and write it as a fraction, make it easier for me, divided by 4. Okay, now what is 22 times 36? Let's see, 22 times 36 is going to be 792. So I have 792/7 divided by 4. Or I have 792/7 times 1/4. So I'm going to come over here and continue down here at the bottom corner. So we've got now 792 divided by 28. All right, if we plug that into the calculator, 792 divided by 28, we get 28.29 centimeters squared. Now, you probably, if you did the fraction, you might have also gotten 28 and 2/7, I believe, centimeters squared. Okay? Those two options are perfectly acceptable. Nobody is going to sit there and say, nope, you can't do that. Fraction or decimal, it is okay for either answer to work. All right? All right. Let's move on to the next problem. Sorry, guys. Just trying to make sure that this thing's actually recording. All right. Let's get ourselves moving. All right. So Marsha's designing a new set of placemats for her dining room table. She's sketched a drawing placemat consisting of a rectangle and 2 semicircles at either end. Each square on the grid measures 4 inches in length. Find the area of the entire placement. Explain your thinking regarding the solution of this problem. Okay. So what it's asking you to do is for you to basically find how much space these placemats are going to take up on her table. So that means we're looking for area. Now it tells us that we've got 2 shapes going on here. We've got rectangles and we got semicircles. Now what was a semicircle again? Correct, it's half of a circle. So if I have 2 semicircles, I have 2 halves of a circle, which means this semicircle and this semicircle should make a whole circle. So I'm only looking at 2 formulas. Area equals length times width, and area equals pi r squared. Now I need to find my dimensions. Now it says each square on the grid measures 4 inches in length. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's 12 inches. This is 1, 2. So this is 8 inches. Now this line here is also known as the diameter. The diameter of our circle is also 8 inches. So remember that. Let's go ahead and find the area of the rectangle. Okay, I'm going to put area and then put a little r down here to represent the rectangle. The length is 12 inches. The width is 8 inches. That means the area of the rectangle is going to equal 96 inches squared. All right. Now I need to find out the area of the circle. Okay, well, the area of the circle is going to be the radius squared. Now, what's the radius squared? Well, I know the diameter is 8 inches, so the radius is half the diameter, so that's going to be 4 squared. Times, now it didn't tell us what form to use for pi, So I'm going to suggest you use 3.14. Okay? So now we've got area equals 16 times 3.14. So what is 16 times 3.14 going to be? Well, 16 times 3.14 is going to equal 50 and 24 hundredths of an inch squared. Now, how am I supposed to find the combined area of these semicircles and this rectangle? Right, I'm going to do a little bit of adding. I'm going to take the area of the rectangle and I'm going to add the area of the circle. So 96.00 inches plus 50.24 inches gives me 146.24 square inches. That's my answer. Okay. Now, the next question down below asked us if Marjorie wants to make 6 placemats, how many square inches of fabric will she need? Assume that there is no waste. Okay. So we're going to assume that there is no waste. Now, if Marjorie wants to make 6 placemats, we know the area of one placemat is 146.24 inches squared. That's one placemat. So in order to find out for how many square inches of fabric we need for 6 placemats, all we're pretty much going to have to do is take the 1 and multiply it by the 6. Okay, so 146.24 times 6 gives me 877.44 square inches. That is how much fabric she is going to need, assuming that she will have no waste, for 6 placemats. All right, let's continue on. All right, so the circumference of a circle is 24 centimeters. What is the exact area of the circle? Draw a diagram to assist you in solving the problem. Okay, well, first off, the circumference, we know that formula is 2 times pi times r, or the circumference is pi times the diameter. Okay? Well, in order for me to do an area problem, which is area equals pi r squared, I need to know what r equals. So I need to set this problem up to where I'm going to use a formula that's going to give me r. Well, the best one for me to use is going to be this one here at the top, 2 pi r. So the circumference is 24 pi. So 24 pi equals 2 pi r. Now, why did I replace the c with 24 pi? It's because it tells me that the circumference of the circle is 24 pi centimeters. So the circumference gets replaced with 24 pi. Now I'm trying to identify what this is. So what's the how do I get rid of everything that's attached to that r? Well, I'm going to be doing some division. The opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. The pi included, because the pi is nothing more than a symbol to represent a number. We already know what the number is. So the 2 divided by 2 gets reduced out, pi divided by pi reduces out. These pi's reduce out, leaving me just 24 divided by 2. So what's the radius going to equal? It's going to equal 12 centimeters. Now I can use that to actually find my area. So the area equals 12 squared, because that's the radius, times pi. Well, 12 squared is going to be 144. And since it didn't tell us what pi equals, and it left the circumference as 24 pi, we're going to leave the area as with a pi as well. So the area equals 144 pi. So basically, what information was it that we needed to actually solve the problem? Well, we needed to know the radius. Okay, we knew the circumference, but we didn't know the radius. So we had to work ourselves backwards to find out what the radius of the circle was. Now, if we had used the formula pi times diameter, we would have found out the diameter was 24 inches, or 24 centimeters. But the problem with that is we weren't looking for the diameter in our area problem. We were only looking for the radius, so we would have had to take our diameter and divide it by 2. All right, last few problems. Find the area of a circle with a diameter of 42 centimeters. So we have our circle. All right, we have a diameter of 42 centimeters, and we want to know the area. So again, what's the formula for area of a circle? Pi r squared. So what do we need to solve our problem? We need to know the radius. We've been given the diameter. How do I find radius? Right. The diameter divided by 2 will give me my radius. So my diameter divided by 2 is going to be 21. So my area is going to be 21 squared times pi. And it tells me to use 22/7 as pi. So let's find out what 21 squared is going to be real quick. Now remember, 21 squared is nothing more than 21 times 21. So we get area equals 441 times 22/7. Okay, so now this becomes a simple multiplication problem. 441 times 22/7 gives me an area of 1,386 centimeters squared. Now, if you're starting to recognize these problems are starting to get easier the more and more we practice them. I'm not saying they're going to be super easy every single time we get to a problem. Like, see this one here. This number 2 says the circumference of a circle is 9 pi centimeters. We need to know what the diameter is, we need to know what the radius is, and we need to know what the area is. So we go back to our problem. Circumference equals 2 pi r, or pi times d. Okay? Now it says what is the diameter. So I'm going to use pi times the diameter. Okay, so I've got 9 pi equals pi times the diameter. Now I need the d by itself, so I'm going to sit there and divide both sides by pi. Okay? Pi's reduced out, so the diameter has got to be 9 centimeters. So our diameter is 9 centimeters. And how do we find the radius again? Right, we take the diameter and divide it by 2. So we're going to take the 9 and divide it by 2, which gives me 4.5 centimeters. Okay, so this is the first time we're working with a decimal for our area. Again, our formula for area is pi r squared, or pi times the radius squared. So again, it tells me to use, at the very beginning it said use 22/7 as pi. So I got 22/7 times the radius squared, which is going to be 4.5 squared. Okay? Now in this situation, I do not think it's a good idea for us to have a decimal. So let's go back and use a fraction instead. So here was 4.5 centimeters. The fraction was the one right before that. So we're going to use 9/2 squared. Now you're asking, Mr. Hale, how do we do a fraction as a square? I'm going to show you. So area equals 22/7 times 9/2 times 9/2. Okay? There's our fraction as a square. We're taking 9/2 and multiplying it by itself one time, so that's 9/2 times 9/2. Now we start doing a little bit of reducing here. 2 reduces to 1, the 22 reduced to 11, so we've got 11 times 9 times 9 divided by 7 times 2. So we've got 11 times 9 times 9 gives me 891 divided by 14. Now let's see if 891 is divisible by 14. It is not. We're going to end up getting ourselves a nice little decimal. Okay, we can have a decimal of 63.6 centimeters squared. Or if you want to do the work, 891 divided by 14, that's 0. 14 times 6, 14 times 84. I subtract, I get 5. Drop the 1. 14 goes into 51 3 times. That's 42. Minus, I get left with 9. So we could also say it is 63 9/14 centimeters squared. Okay? Now, if you have any questions about your homework, remember, your homework, all right, for most of you, should have been, I believe it was pages 124 through 125, and you had numbers 1, 4 through 6, and 9 to complete. Okay? If you have any questions about any of these homework problems, come into class tomorrow ready, knowing which problem is. Don't come in and say, Mr. Hale, I did not know how to do number 4. Give it a try. Let me see where your mistake might be at, because it might just be something small. Whereas if you just come in with a blank, I got no clue where it is where you're struggling at. I want to know where your problem is at, not that the whole problem is your problem. That's not fair to everybody else. All right, y'all have yourselves a good night. I will see you bright and early first thing in the morning.